Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Beyond a Sermon. I'm your show host and communications director here at West End Assembly of God, Jim Washock, and I'm so thankful that you were able to join us either live right now at 3 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon Eastern Time, or perhaps you might be watching this on demand in the evening or the morning. Whenever time you might be watching this, we're so happy that you were able to tune in and join us on as we dig deeper into a double-decker, so to speak, of sermons, past 2 weeks of sermons where we've been taking an emphasis on our missions projects that we carry forth throughout the year here at WEAG. And we are looking at 2 weeks of sermons, and I have one of the pastors that brought one of those messages to us. I want you to welcome our kids minister, Lisa Eggert, and then we've also joined by our missions director, Cindy Johnson. So thank you very much for joining. For those of you that may not know, Lisa, and as well as our lead pastor, Shane, brought our past 2 weeks of sermons, first with Make It Personal, and then followed this past Sunday by What's Your Plan? That was a message that Shane delivered. So we're going to delve deeper into both of those, as well as talk about some of our missions outreach programs that we have here in town, such as the West End Thrift Store, and then also how folks are able to contribute to and support missions throughout the year with what's called a Faith Promise Commitment. So thank you both for being on the show today. Episode 40. Can't believe this is the 40th one of these.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Going on. Absolutely. And so we are going to start right off with you, Lisa. As you shared a couple weeks ago when you opened up your sermon, you reflected back on the devastating impact of the tsunami that hit India. I think it was the day after Christmas, 2004. Is that correct? And you mentioned how, of course, usual response, praying for folks, thinking about them, and then you just kind of move on with life. Question I have for you is, 5 years later, you signed up to go to India. And so I'm curious as to what inspired such a transformation in your action to go instead of observing from afar, and how has that decision since transformed your perspective in regards to other countries and so forth?
I wish I had some great, spiritual answer, but I think, and possibly it would be an answer that many people would have, it was just an opportunity that I had on that day in 2009, and I don't at all think I was connecting those dots at that time. I was here in the service and there were projects, lining the halls, and I walked by, and quite honestly, I had been to India once with a friend, actually, and so I think I just liked it, and thought, well, this looks great. And honestly, I thought so many people are around here, and this seems exciting, and I've never, thought about going on a mission trip to India, but it's right here in front of me, so I signed up. I don't think there was a lot to that, but just that it was in front of me, and it was an opportunity, and so I took it. Did
you know other people who were going when you signed up?
No.
Okay. All right.
I'm sure I knew who Jill was, but no, I didn't. And so, of course, the people after a trip quite well, right? But no, I didn't know anyone on that trip. But to answer the second part of your question, anytime you go on a trip, that trip for me, I had been on a few local mission trips and one overseas trip before that one. And so I was not going on my very first mission trip, but that trip just expanded my heart and my desire to know the people of India better and the country better. And I knew when I was there that it would not be my last time going there. Probably knew that the moment I stepped foot in the country that I would go again. And so I think anytime you're anywhere that's not your comfort zone or your home, your perspective shifts. And of course, I think that changes the way we live, and then it changes the way that we see life and the way that we can relate to others who are different from us. And so that trip and any other time that I feel like I've been places that kind of challenge your perspective or shift the way that you see things, it just changes you, and your perspective on your life and on others as well. So
it certainly transformed your travel plan choices because you've been how many times?
Yeah,
since?
8 times
8
now.
times.
So
Oh,
yeah,
my word.
to India, and so I
Just
love
since 2009. So
Yeah,
it's
and-
in less than 10 years, you've been 8 times.
And that
Wow.
may not happen for everyone, I fell in love with that place. But I think even bigger than falling in love with India, I fell in love with going somewhere. And that just also had a kind of a pull on my heart to
India-
keep going back there.
Sure. India is certainly a very large country. Do you
Yeah.
tend to go to the same place each time?
So
or-
for the
or
first
you
few years I did, and
Okay.
then I started doing some exploring, and
Yeah.
now have pretty much been at the northernmost point of India and the southernmost. So I've done some traveling in the country and spent longer bouts of time there. So yes, but I always have a feel of wanting to go back to that same first place because I love it so much.
Yeah. And are you typically, like here, are you working with kids often when you go, or these construction trips, or what have been the purpose of these 8 or so trips?
Yeah, specifically on that trip, it's been different, and I've been in
Okay.
different places, and it's been a mix of all those things, kids and construction. For the last several years, I've been doing a lot of teaching there, and so not actually with kids, but with adults who are teaching kids.
Okay.
And so doing gatherings where pastors and volunteers are hoping to begin kids ministry and what that looks like. And so I've been working more with adults, but it's been a mix of things.
Okay.
Pretty much when something comes up and a need comes up and I'm there, I'll jump in and do whatever it is. So.
Yeah, yeah. Cindy, when was your first missions trip?
1994.
94.
A long
okay.
time ago.
And what inspired you to? Where'd you go, and what inspired you to go on it?
I went to Arizona, of
Okay.
all places.
Yeah.
And we worked with a Native American population there right outside of Phoenix.
Okay.
For me, it was really a personal decision based on all the stories I heard here at WEAG. And it was the people that I worked with coming home from their different trips and talking about what they had experienced and what they had seen and just how it had changed them. And I wanted that. I wanted to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I also selected Arizona because I thought, I don't know if I could do an India like you did right off the bat.
Yeah.
2 weeks is longer, and so it worked in well. And I think there's something special about that first place you go.
Sure.
And so Arizona will always be a really special place with me. I made some great friends there. The missionary and his family became very close to mine, and it was just a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
And it opened up a door that now I find myself in full-time missions. Yeah.
And when did that start? When did you start in your role as missions director?
In about 2004 was
Okay.
when I moved to missions.
Okay.
And then I worked 5 years for Roy. He was the missions director at the time.
Yeah.
And then ever since then, I've been missions director here at WEAG.
All right. Very
Yeah.
good. Well, I'm going to ask you a question about what other folks experience many times when they go on a missions trip, but I do want to pause for just a moment to remind our viewers that may be tuning in live right now on Tuesday afternoon that you have an opportunity that those that watch it on demand do not have, and that is you have an opportunity to ask these two a question that you might have on your mind in regards to mission journeys, trips, outreaches, and so forth. Please use the comment area next to the viewer to go ahead and ask your question, and be sure to do that while we've got them with us now at this point. Cindy, you're responsible for overseeing so many trips every year throughout the year. Isn't it like 24 or so trips every year, something like that?
It varies from year to year
Okay.
based upon everything from how many people we have that can go, and honestly, it's how much resources do we have
Sure.
to be able to make that happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 17, 20 projects, something like that.
Wow. Well, just working with you, I'm always surprised that there's not like 24 teams out at every one moment, because I know there's been
I hope
moments
not.
we've had 3 out at a time.
Yeah, we
I
have.
recall sometimes. So no doubt you get to work. Everybody's got a first time, and no doubt they have reservations. So I'm curious, what kind of reservations do you often hear from folks who are apprehensive about going, not sure about signing up, or have signed up, but they're still like, I'm not sure what I'm going to be experiencing and so forth. And then what do you hear from them when they return?
I love asking those questions, and when you have that first team meeting and you get a group of primarily strangers together, that this is all their first trip, or you'll have a mix of veterans and then a few first-timers. And it'll be everything from how am I going to pay for this? It's expensive to be able to go to an India project, which can be over $2,000. And what's involved in the cost, and gee, am I going to need to get shots, and all those things. Can I get time off?
Can I flush my toilet paper?
Yeah. We pretty much
drink the
learn to
water,
talk
everything,
about just about anything on a missions trip. And then for some people, it's, am I going to have to room with someone else? And am I going to have to share space with, people I don't know for an entire week? And what about my family? And am I going to be away from a telephone, or, So there are a lot of different reasons. And then for some people, it's, are you going to ask me to do something that I am not gifted or qualified to do? I don't know how to lay block. I don't know how to teach about kids ministry like you do.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I've seen happen on trips over the years is the way that the team is composed. It's amazing the number of times that we think we're going to do maybe a building project. And then what happens is, as the week unfolds, we wind up with a missionary that needed somebody that had an IT skill set. And somebody on the team had that gift. And somebody else needs someone else to talk about kids ministry, and they were able to do that. You can teach anybody how to lay block. It's a wonderful skill to have. But sometimes it's the other things that come along also that just unfold as the weeks go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no doubt these people have amazing stories to tell when they come back from their first trip.
Yeah.
What sort of things do you hear from folks? Other than, wow, that was awesome, I can't wait to go back, because that's
Right.
probably a given from most. But things that maybe somebody who has not been on a missions trip might be surprised to learn that folks
Well, I think one of
say
the
when they come
big
back.
ones that I hear over and over again is that people go with an idea that they are going to serve others. I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
And what happens is they realize that they come back and they received far more than what they gave. They have a new appreciation for a faith that sustains people in a foreign country, that we have so many abilities in place here through social government programs and things like that to pick up the slack that aren't available in other places. And then for them to be able to meet other people that speak into their lives is just, it's really exciting to hear those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's neat. Thank you very much for sharing that. So for those of you that are watching who've never been on a missions trip, no doubt you got 1,000,001 questions. Cindy's heard every single one of them before. After all these years, chances are.
People surprise me.
Yeah, and so you're not alone with being apprehensive and feeling anxious about it, as you felt with your first trip, right? And so there's folks. You're not alone. There's folks here that can help answer those questions, and you will be with a team. You will not be alone, and you'll just be amazed at what happens. And so, Lisa, I want to come back to you to ask. In your pastoral role especially, how have you seen perhaps the transformational impact of WEAG's heavy involvement in missions be woven into the cultural DNA of the WEAG community that necessitates continued and increased involvement by every member of this congregation into the mission of expressing the love of Jesus around the world? How have you seen that happen?
Yeah, I love it. That's, one reason why I love being here so much. I think, while I've only been here 11 short years of its almost 50-year existence, we see from conversations to where people are spending their money, and the way that they're spending their time. I feel like there's hardly a Sunday that you don't hear about some activity or project or some way that people are participating in something beyond themselves. And, I've seen it. I've been privileged to see it in even different age groups. Our preschoolers and elementary schoolers have a compassion kid, and, the amazing influence that the youth have had, especially with Lift Up RVA. And so it isn't even just our adults. I've just seen, I think I'm always thankful and grateful for the founders and for, Bob Roden and John Hirschman and those that have just decided that that is what they want the DNA to be in this church, and then to see how people respond, I think it's just evident of what God does in your heart when you go. Because we could preach sermons about missions every week. But there's still a disconnect until you go. And so over the last 50 years, with so many people going and coming back and sharing stories, I think that's how it's begun to be a part of our DNA, and now so flourishing and evident in the way people are talking. And even the new folks who maybe, haven't gone or aren't sure, it's hard to be in an environment that loves something so much and doesn't start to at least wonder about it, or ask about it, or at least want to hear more about it if that's where they're at, And so I've just seen it in all ages and all cultures, and different types of services, and just the different things that we do, not just simply the 2 weeks of missions convention that we have, but it's really a neat thing. And it really just comes out when you start to talk with people and hear how they're spending their time and their money and their resources and the things that they're wanting to pass down to their kids. And so I think you can see it in big ways, but really it's in those conversations and those when the people come back and share their stories, that's when you start seeing it like a ripple effect. And I think that's one thing that's so beautiful about this place. As in your role as kids pastor, no doubt the number of missions trips that you've been on influence how you lead them and what you expose them to. How do our kids here at WEAG, how do they receive information and experiences about missions on a regular basis, and have kids gone on missions trips? And what has that been like for them? So we do our best. Of course, it's a difficult population to send, but we want them to be excited about missions. And so something that I started years ago, actually on this first WEAG India trip as well, and now every other trip that I've ever gone on, a few weeks before I go anywhere, I have all of our kids make cards for whoever I will be working with wherever I'm going. So maybe kids, maybe adults, maybe whatever it looks like. So our kids are always making cards, and I let them take pictures, and then when I'm passing those out wherever I'm at, I'm taking pictures. And so our kids are actually ending up with a picture of a little boy in Romania holding their card that they've made. And I've, been to several homes, and those pictures are on refrigerators and tag boards. And, our kids most likely won't meet those kids ever, but we're allowing them to see this connection of what we can do for others, and even if you can't go, what you can do. And so we always make sure that they hear about the trips when I come back. They participate in missions convention weeks. They were out, if you heard them, sorry, but they were out in the halls looking at all the boards. They get to interact with the WEAG graphics as well. So they're a part of sponsoring to Compassion Kids, like I said. And so as much as we can, we're making sure they're hearing trip recaps, just like we're sharing in adult services. They're hearing that as well. And I have been on several trips where kids and youth have been a part of, and it wasn't a youth trip or a kid trip, but it was just a general church trip that a parent has brought their kids or sent their youth. And while in the beginning it might be cool for the kid or youth because they're missing school, it's way bigger than that. When they get there, that they are actually a part of a team. And those have been my favorite teams, I think, when I've had kids and youth with older adults, and just a mix of generations on a trip. It's amazing to watch a 12-year-old learn how to plaster a wall alongside, the team, and have them interact. And, when you have any sort of work somewhere else with kids, the kids on your team will be the ones that can connect. You're sitting here, and I'm generally in tears watching our kids. We're, worried about what we're going to say, and are we going to say this right or this right? And then all of a sudden, you see the kid that you brought. They're just on the ground doing the sidewalk chalk or doing whatever. And so they haven't gotten into a worry of what do I do, right or wrong. They just love the kids there. And so, I've been on trips with kids, youth, and it's been amazing to see them come back they're usually always ready to sign up for their next trip as soon
Oh,
as
that's
possible.
awesome.
So yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
That is so cool. Cindy, I want to ask you about the shirt you're wearing because it doesn't look like you've cleaned it.
I have, but I
So
have.
we assume Cindy does her laundry, but this shirt in particular does
It
have
looks a
paint
little
on it.
old.
It
Yes.
does.
So tell us about this shirt.
This was my 1995 T-shirt.
Okay.
Second year that I went to Arizona.
Okay.
If you could see the back, we have a trip list on the back
Oh,
of
nice.
about 10 trips. But yeah, so I've had this and pull them out. I have a stack of missions T-shirts that we use from time to time.
Uh-huh.
You'll notice most of our T-shirts are short sleeved because most of the places we go seem to be hot.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, so this was my second T-shirt.
Do people ever get their shirts signed? Now I'm certain
They
not
do.
every trip has a shirt, but do they get their
Yeah.
shirts signed sometimes?
We've
by the
had
you
people
meet?
have them signed, or
Yeah.
they hang on to them, or they won't wear them on the trip because they want to wear them here and they don't want them to get them messed up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that is neat. Now, certainly, I want to ask you, Cindy, about our West End thrift store.
Mm-hmm.
That is something now. I think correct me if I'm wrong. We're coming up on 2-year anniversary of that, or maybe
are. Mm-hmm.
just had, or something like that.
January the 5th was our second anniversary.
Oh, very good. January 5th. How about that? Second anniversary of West End Thrift Store. For those that don't know, is a thrift store that was founded by West End Assembly of God on West Broad Street here in Richmond, just west of the intersection with Glenside Drive. So if you haven't been there, we certainly encourage you to check it out. It's open Tuesday through Saturday. And I don't remember the exact hours, but I'm sure you can.
I can tell you what they are. For the most part, 10 to 5,
10 to
Monday,
5?
Tuesday through Friday, and 10
Okay.
to 4 on Saturday.
So for viewers that may not be familiar with the backstory, how did this idea come about? How did it get started? Why is it there? And how does it work? And you have 90 seconds to explain all that. No, I'm just kidding.
90 seconds. Okay, so one of the things that we do is that for us, it's really important to keep the cost of trips down so a lot of people can go. So
Yeah.
we have never passed along departmental cost to our team members. That
Okay.
means the supplies that you work with, the Bibles that you hand out, the medical things that you use to treat with. So we always had to have a fundraiser to be able to make those supplies happen because they can be very expensive.
So the people, just to clarify, so the people that go on the trips, they're really only paying for their cost of
Exactly.
transportation, lodging, food,
Yep.
all that sort of stuff.
Insurance,
Okay.
lovely T-shirt, that kind of thing, without
exactly.
paint.
Right, without paint.
So we actually it's been about 5 years ago, we started talking about what was our next fundraiser going to look at, like that could be self-sustaining and ongoing. And if you've been around Richmond at all very long, you know that we are a thrift store city.
Yes.
And people like to thrift. We love to recycle. We love to reclaim. And so we started talking about that, and it took a few years to get it off the ground.
Okay.
But with the deacon's blessing, 100% of the profit from the thrift store goes to fund the supplies that we use on our projects.
Yeah, yeah.
So it pays things like baggage costs for all those supplies that we take with us, and everything from cinder blocks to Bibles.
Very good.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you another question about it. I want to pause for just a moment. Remind our viewers that are watching right now live on Tuesday afternoon, if you have a question for either Lisa or Cindy, please go ahead and use the comments area to the side of the viewer, below the viewer, to get your question in while we've got them available to us. Otherwise, if you're watching this on demand, you could still use the comments area or our text messaging number to ask a question, and we'll get it to them and get a response back to you. But Cindy, in regards to the thrift store, I understand it's been going gangbusters. It's been
doing very
exceeding
well.
expectations and so forth. How does it work? Where does the thrift store get the items that it sells and so forth, if 100% of all the profits are going to missions?
Well, it comes from WEAGers for the most part,
Okay.
and WEAGers' friends and family members, and people clean out their closets and they decide to buy a new living room sofa, or like Lisa said the other day when she was advertising for us, their new dining room table.
Yeah.
And so they bring it over to the thrift store. They get a contribution for their donation, and then we turn around, clean it up, and sell it, and all the profit goes to help us continue the program that we have.
How about that?
Yeah.
That's great.
And it's also staffed by volunteers, which is
Yay.
an amazing thing. So we don't have a huge overhead,
Right.
and it's just a wonderful place to be able to have a community together. Those people love being together and serving together. and knowing that they also are on their own mission here in town. It is very much a missions project. It gives us an opportunity also to talk to our customers that come in from the community. They want to know, Matt, where are you going? Matt's going to Ethiopia, and they see the pictures on the wall of the trips and the places they've been, and they ask about those kinds of things. And it gives us an opportunity to share a little bit about what we do.
Yeah. Now, to those viewers that haven't been to the thrift store, when you hear thrift store, many times there's preconceived notions that come to mind. West End Thrift Store defies all of those expectations.
I hope so.
The volunteer team does an amazing job. It is
They do.
it is a 5-star boutique retail place, that is for sure. And there are tons of items, all sorts of stuff. Furniture, apparel for the entire family, right? What other
A little
things
bit
are
of
maybe
everything.
just-
A lot of household goods.
Yeah.
Women's clothes.
Yeah.
Rugs.
Sporting
There's
equipment.
games, kids,
Yeah.
toys.
Absolutely.
Dishes. Dining room tables.
That's
Yeah.
right. So when you need stuff for your own house, your workplace, need to buy a gift for a friend, go to West End Thrift first and foremost. You might
Right.
very well just find what you need, that perfect, unique something, and you'll be supporting world missions at the same time, which is really, really awesome. Lisa, I want to get back to your sermon a little bit as well, because your title was Make It Personal. And so you shared a number of stories of participants from WEAG that have gone on mission trips about how that trip became very personal for them. How might our viewers more appreciate how impactful going on and or supporting others to go on a trip is to their own life?
Yeah, I think specifically going, I mentioned this during my sermon, but I really think, of course I believe in the whole make it personal, right?
Yeah.
But I really think that we are so, even at our best, so focused on problems and issues, and in even a good way, wanting to fix things and make things better for people. But I really think that we have to make this shift, from being able to just see problems to really seeing people. And I think that we often address missions or just in general issues that we hear about or know about as just that, a set of issues,
Yeah.
and what changes when we're able to shift from seeing that to seeing the actual people who are at the heart of the issues, whether it's here in Richmond or around the world, and I think that there's no way to make that shift without really going and seeing those faces, right? And so when you go and you see a face and you meet a person and you hear a story, you are automatically disconnected from the issue and connected to the person. And that's this whole concept of making it personal. And that's why we could talk so much, but until you're face to face, having a conversation like this, that you will I just think it's our nature to focus on the problem. And so when we're able to go and make that shift, that's what changes you, is because you now have a person and a name and a story, and there might still be that issue, but you see a person, and you're going to see issues differently when it's personal to you. And so whether that be you supporting someone to go, is, of course, you're making that possible for someone. And so while that's important, going, I don't think anything substitutes going for you to be able to make it personal. But when you're not able to and you're able to support someone, you're doing that for someone else. And so I think that, they're both so important.
Yeah. It's almost like being able to operate as a lowercase m missionary versus a professional missionary, right? We all have that opportunity even here at home. And one way we can do that, at WEAG anyway, is through a mechanism that's called a faith promise commitment. And so, Cindy, I would start with you and ask if you wouldn't mind, for viewers that may not be familiar with what this faith promise thing is, or maybe they've heard about it but don't really know what it is. What exactly is the purpose of this faith promise, and why is it separate from the other giving that occurs here at WEAG?
Faith Promise is the program where combined together all of our gifts are added up, and then that allows us to support the missionaries that our missions committee and pastors have decided that these are people worthy of having our investment in.
Okay.
There are people that we have a relationship with. There are people that we are like-minded in how we do missions and how we do outreach. And so for us, it's not just about being able to say that we go to countries around the world. It's we want to be involved there, and it might be through a short-term team, or it might be through a career missionary that's on the ground.
Yeah.
And I will say that that's one thing that also a short-term team does for you. When I go to Guatemala and I spend time with Hector and Ruth Aragon, and I work with them and I get to know them, then my commitment to them as part of Faith Promise becomes more real, and it becomes personal. And then I have an investment in how did their kids grow up, and do they have grandchildren yet? All those things that are the same thing for we here as a staff that live together. So that it becomes more real that way.
Yeah.
And that's what Faith Promise does. It allows people together to collectively be a part of what we're doing around the world, and ensuring that those people continue to get to do that.
Yeah. Lisa, you've been personally impacted by Faith Promise, haven't you?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, many people don't know, but before I came and was a part of staff here at WEAG, I was working with a campus ministry called Chi Alpha.
Okay.
And so I did that for 3 years, and that is actually, well, it's local and national, but I was in Texas and in Colorado, so local. But that is a missionary status position, and so I had to raise my support for those 3 years. It wasn't a paycheck coming in, and so that was so frightening at first, but I'm so thankful for that experience. I thought, in the beginning, I'm asking for money, I'm asking for money, and who is going to want to send in $20 a month for me to do ministry on this campus? They don't go to this campus, how is that going to work? And I definitely was not so sure of that in the beginning, and God really used it to expand my thinking about partnering with others. So for 3 years, my livelihood of rent, food, everything that you would spend on with a paycheck came from people who gave to Faith Promise. And so actually specifically WEAG through Faith Promise supported me for 3 years while I was doing ministry on campuses. Okay. And so while that was only 3 years of my life, that quickly taught me that it was so much about a partnership. Like Cindy was talking about it wasn't about me asking for money to pay my rent. That that seems so small in comparison to what the opportunity really gives people who are willing to give. They are partnering with every single thing that I did for those 3 years on campus, they were a part of. Yeah. And whether they even knew specifically, when you give, at a church like this, you may not even know all 114 people that you are helping, but you're giving to such a broad range of ministries and missionaries, and you hardly know the impact that you're making here locally and around the world. And so being the recipient of Faith Promise for 3 years has changed my life in a way that I would never not give to Faith Promise. When you're a recipient of something and you see the impact of what it is and what it means, it's hard to not then be a part of it and to support it in a way by giving into it now. And I know people who are, missionaries and who are receiving our Faith Promise, and I can tell you it means the world to them. And you really are so far removed, but so connected when you're a part of it, because you really are a part of everything that they're doing in whatever country or whatever state or whatever city. And while right away it felt to me like, oh, I'm asking for money, or, oh, how does that connect? It becomes so much more of a partnership and such a beautiful way to see so many people involved in really the Great Commission, right? Spreading the gospel. And so it's a privilege. It turned from, I'm going to ask people to give money, to this privilege of allowing people to become a part of what God's doing around the world. And if you think of it that way, you're like, why would you not want to be a part of that and be a part of that in the ways that God would use me? And so it's definitely changed my perspective, being on both ends of it.
Yeah. Cindy, it seems in life, so many things that we get involved in or that we're asked to participate in are very complicated, they're time-consuming, and so on and so forth. But I think Shane was driving home a point this past Sunday and talking about Faith Promise, that it's really simple. And,
it is
and people can participate for even $1 a month. Like, this isn't something that you've got to pour a whole big, huge sacrificial commitment into, but having everyone participate.
It's
is
a
goal, right?
collective gift.
Yeah.
That's what enables us to be able to make sure that about $35,000 a month goes out
Wow.
to all of these missionaries. They don't all get the same amount. The base amount is about $100 to $150 a month.
Yeah.
And then there's a scale for the people that have been with us the longest. So it's just one more way of together being able to build community. And so knowing that all those gifts go together to support their extended family. And then in return, they get a letter about once a year from, once a month that will let them know what's going on with specific needs or specific things that are going on with a certain missionary.
Yeah.
You know, when I was raising support, I had someone giving $6.50 a month. It was a college student at the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was no different than the donor that was giving $200 a month
Yeah.
or $500, whatever, you know, because she prayed about what she could do, and that was her contribution to being a part of how God was using me in Colorado with Chi Alpha. And I thought that $6.50 was amazing every month coming in, because you know the heart behind it and her desire to partner with God and whatever he was doing in whatever way he could. And at that point, it was $6.50.
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes giving can certainly feel like a sacrifice, and certainly God calls us to give sacrificially and so forth. But clearly, from both of yours involvement in Faith Promise, there must have been sort of a tipping point in mindset that this doesn't even feel like a sacrifice anymore. It's just there's just so much more to gain, right, from it.
Yeah.
I mean, just from yourself as a giver, but also the recipient.
Yeah.
Would you say?
It's almost like my kids when I want to give them something,
Yeah.
like a birthday gift or whatever. I can't imagine not doing it.
Yeah.
Because I have faces that will always be in my mind for the people that I've met, the newsletters that I've read, the stories that they've told me, that I know how they're using those funds. I know that it's worth keeping them on the field doing what they're doing that I'm not called to do or not able to do full time.
Yeah.
So I just can't imagine not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you go on a short-term trip, you are generally working with folks who are there long-term and full-time. And so in a week, you get to see someone's life, and that's impossible to come back and not see how your involvement of so simply giving to this Faith Promise Fund can and does really affect and influence ministry in wherever. So especially going, even if it's for a week, and that's what your calling and your involvement is going for a week, you're going to see the people who are giving a lifetime. And while that might not be what God has for you, it's hard to not want to be a part of that
Yeah.
when you get back and
Yeah.
you realize how much you do have and how much you really can give in a way that would be so beneficial to whoever it's going to.
Yeah, yeah. So our viewers can participate in global missions and local missions every day. You can participate in Faith Promise. You can, if you're here in Richmond, you can donate to the thrift store, volunteer at the thrift store, and there's plenty of other ways to be involved on a regular basis. But if you do have an opportunity to hop in a plane and go somewhere else and participate in bringing the love of Christ to others in that way, I think it's great here in episode 40 of the show that we can think back to the beginning of this, which was really the interview I did with the guys who went to Haiti. That's really kind of what kicked off this whole program to begin with. And there you had 4 guys of very different professions, I recall, who even, I think 1 or 2 of them, it was a medical trip, and 1 or 2 of them weren't even in the medical profession, and yet they were still able to touch the lives of people that were there. So for our viewers that are kind of sitting on the fence, get off the fence. Just leap over. Meet with these 2. Ask them more questions than we're able to address here within 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And go ahead and make the trip. You will obviously be changed by it as you try to change the lives of other people as well. We want to thank you very much for watching. Certainly, as I said earlier, if you have additional questions for Lisa or Cindy, you can use the comment area. You can contact the church at weag.org. You can text us and so forth. There's plenty of ways to get your questions. We'll get them off to them. and you'll be able to get your answers back that way. And or you can come to service this Sunday. I believe we kind of wrap up the whole. We collect the faith promise
We do.
cards this Sunday, correct? So those of you that are watching, make a faith promise commitment. You can even download a faith promise card online, and bring those cards back this Sunday. We'll be collecting them then, and we'll see what God has planned for global outreach this year.
Awesome.
Should be pretty awesome. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks so
and thank you,
much.
viewers, for tuning in. We hope you have a blessed week.